I'm going to be talking through this. The washing machine in the background, sorry about that. Hopefully you can hear me because I'm busy working while I do this. I'm going to be talking today about what ticked me off. Our library once a month is having Ask a Lawyer, where a lawyer will come and answer legal questions about whatever you want to talk about. When you say whatever, I mean like hardly anything. Because first thing, they're having the same lawyer. And as we all know, lawyers can't know everything about all laws. So they specialize, just like doctors. There's just too much information for one lawyer to be able to handle everything. And I'm sorry about that in the background. I just got a lot to do, so I can't wait for the washing machine to stop. So anyways, this lawyer specializes, I can't remember exactly what he said because I didn't write it down, but he specializes in, I think he said, elder care and inheritance. Now, so that's very limited. And like I said, the library is having only this one lawyer who specializes in this one thing every month. It's going to lose, it's going to run out of clientele very quickly. Like he's trying to strum up business which I understand that. But the thing is, there's only so much one attorney can help, especially at the town the size, it's Hudson. It's like 2,500 people. So, anyway, so I went there not knowing what his specialty was. I did ask him, and I says, and he probably can't help me, but he says, well, ask anyways, because of course he's trying to strum up business. And I asked him a few questions. He says, well, that one's about Constitution law, and I kind of thought, well, not exactly. I mean, you need to know these laws if you're going. Yes, what I was asking was about Constitution laws in a way, but it was about health insurance for same-sex couples. One of the questions that I thought of while I was talking to him is, does all states have to, I know all states have to recognize same-sex marriage, but do they have to provide same-sex marriage? Can they deny same-sex marriage going on in their state? Now, I know they have to accept same-sex marriage going on that happened in other states. They have to accept it in their state if the people were to move or to visit. But what about, can they prevent the same-sex marriages from happening in their state or in their county, whatever? He didn't know. Another thing was, I heard this, I don't know how true it is. My source is unreliable because I've caught them lying in the past. One of my sources said that Michigan has to accept same-sex marriage, but their employers don't need to provide health insurance. And that's a loophole, not really a loophole. I guess it was an agreement because Michigan was one of the holdouts until they made it nationwide. Michigan didn't want to accept same-sex marriages. So, anyways, now here's here's where the little nitpicky stuff comes in, and this is where people get confused. Because just because they have to accept same-sex marriage or even perform same-sex marriage, they might have had a loophole or a opening to where they didn't have to provide all the same advantages of heterosexual marriages. So, and like I said, my one friend said that was something that was agreed upon, that these states that were holdouts did not, they didn't have to force the employers to cover same-sex couples in like for places that offer health insurance. So now he was saying that there might be exceptions for people, religious exemptions for like Hobby Lobby and Chick-fil-A. They might get out of doing that for, saying it's a religious exemption because they don't agree with same-sex marriage. So, but that wasn't what I was asking. What I was asking, and he acknowledged it. He says, that might be where the confusion came in, is if they will be exempt. He says they might be able to get exempt if they are, claiming religious exemption. So, anyways, but I would think that he should know this, being that he does supposedly deal in inheritance law and stuff like that. You would think that would be part of what he needs to know for, like, when in certain situations, maybe the military, where the spouse gets covered even after the person holding the initial holder of the health insurance or car insurance, maybe even, in the case of the military, there's special military insurance that even when the spouse, auto insurance, where even when the spouse dies, who was the one who served in the military, that the surviving spouse can get covered under the car insurance, but, same with the health insurance. So that is something that he should know, right? Which makes me kind of wonder, is he anti-same-sex marriage? Is he, homophobe or whatever you want to call it? And then another question. Now, here's one of the things I think I put on my other videos, that a lot of people think that common law marriage in all states is equal to what I guess you'd call traditional marriage, legal marriage, whatever you call it, which it's not. And this would probably depend on the state, but at least in Ohio, there are some limitations. An acquaintance of mine the only reason I know that is an acquaintance of mine had a common law marriage. According to each state has their own common law laws. You got to perform certain activities to be able to consider yourself common law. And so she fulfilled all them requirements. She was common law for years. And then she found out that it was like a 401k or a profit sharing, like if her husband or, her common law husband died, she would not have access to it because it was not a legal marriage. So then she ended up getting married, and the common law divorce thing is, that's another complicated issue too, and I can go on that later, because she did end up having to kind of sneak around the fact that she was common law, because there's no common law divorce. Because like if she was to get married to him, she would have, according to the people at the courthouse, she would have had to get common law divorce from him, but Ohio doesn't have a common law divorce. I don't think any state does, because so few people do common law, or at least they do common law the right way. She would have had to get a common law divorce from him to get legally married to him. And so her attorney, she's like, well, how do I do that? Because there's no common law divorce laws, and nobody knows how to do this. And he said, well, just go in there and pretend you're not married. They're not going to look it up. They don't even know how, they probably wouldn't even know how to look up a common law. There's really no paper trail. So just go in there, pretend you're not married, get the certificate, and then proceed with your, wedding and get your license, and everything's fine. And that worked fine for her. So anyways, but this man should have known what same-sex relationships, the legalities of that is because that is going to be part of his practice in the future, unless he's a bigot and refuses to take people because of same-sex, which is really jerkaholic of him. And so then there was another thing, and this man, I would not trust him as far as I can throw him, because he's just out for the money. Well, one thing he does, he says he does prenup. Michigan Michigan is not a no prenup. You can get a prenup, but they're basically worthless. It's a waste of money. You might as well just open your window and throw the money out the window. Because Michigan has such strict laws. Pretty much everything's covered under Michigan marriage and divorce laws to where you don't need a prenup. It's a common asset state, which means whatever you go in with, when you divorce, you get that. Unless, now there's exceptions. The exceptions, well, really there's only one exception. If that law is going to leave one party destitute, the judge can and probably will alter a little bit. And this lawyer doesn't even know what he's talking about, because he's saying, oh, well, the lawyers try and do 50-50. No, they don't. Michigan asset law, what you go in with the marriage, you leave with the marriage, unless one party is going to be left destitute or it's going to be such a financial disparity between parties. That's not 50-50. Okay, so this attorney doesn't know what he's talking about. And again, he should really know this, because this is part of the legal, this is part of inheritance and all this stuff. But anyways, he says he does, what do you call it? He does prenup. And of course, he's claiming it's really good idea to get a prenup. You should really protect yourself, blah, blah, blah. No, because every exception that would be made under a prenup would be made by a judge if it were legal and if it was fair and balanced to both parties. There's nothing you can put in a prenup that will override the state. You can't prenup something that will override state law. State law overrides your prenup, okay? National law overrides your prenup, You cannot prenup, as far as I know, in any state, you cannot prenup human beings. Like, when I'm saying human beings, I'm talking your children. You cannot prenup that. You cannot prenup something, like you can't prenup, for example, if I had a business and my fiance, had just worked rank and file. I have a business right now. I'll use the business I'm talking about. Okay, I have a business. Quick Made Voodoo Dolls and Catnip Toys. Find me on Google Business. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, Bonanza, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Find me everywhere. Anyways, I own a business. Now, if my business was to become, and my partner works, he just works rank and file up at the University of Michigan. Again, I'm sorry for this background noise, but I just don't have time to wait. So, if my business, he gets rank and file, makes decent money. Now, let's say my business, Oprah was to discover my business, put my business on her favorite thing, showing off a voodoo doll of mine. People will flock to my business and want to buy and buy and buy and want more and more and more. And let's say I grow my business, I get more sewers, and we just be making these dolls by hand. And this business becomes very profitable. Let me say I get an LLC, or I sell it to someone, whatever, or I get like a ghost co-owner, what do you call them, phantom co-owner. And my business just grows. Let's just say my business explodes. And then me and my partner were to get divorced. I could not, in my prenup, either ban him from my business, from getting my business, any assets of my business. Well, I could, but it wouldn't stand up in court. I mean, if an attorney, a smart attorney, would look that over and say, this is not legal, you should change it, just so we don't get the false hope that I'm going to be able to keep my business if it explodes, if it blows up and becomes profitable. Also, I cannot prenup him to get that if we were to divorce. Again, that's not the law in Michigan. And again, an attorney would not, a good attorney would not allow that. He'd say, that is not legal. That's not how that works. And bank against whatever, whatever you come into, you leave with, again. And this is the Michigan law. If there is a great disparity between parties in divorce, you just, you can't prenup that in or out, yay or nay. You can't do that because the Michigan, and the judges have a lot of sway. And how this rolls down, because this isn't a jury thing. I don't think there's ever a jury thing in any state when it comes to divorce and holdings in divorce. But yeah, so he was really, it gives you extra security. No, it does not. It gives you nothing. As a matter of fact, it gives you less security because you're just throwing hundreds of dollars out the window. And let me tell you, when I looked into prenup, there's only one place I could find around here. Now, he says he's been doing prenup for, 15, 20, 25 years. I don't remember how many years, but this was before we got married. But apparently he wasn't advertising prenups much because I looked for prenup and I could only find one. And they were in Adrian. And even the person in Adrian, I think she was a much better attorney than this floozy over here, this yokel that I was talking to today. But anyways, at least her assistant was much, and her prices were much higher too, which price, goes to show the quality. But anyway, or at least I think it was more expensive. I mean, I wouldn't give this guy the money for what he's asking. But anyways, it was a $250 for this woman in Adrian, this attorney in Adrian. It was a $250 deposit, which means, and your deposit or retainer fee. Your retainer fee is not non-refundable for people who don't know. So but your retainer will be used up very quickly. Your retainer goes toward the payment of your, they just don't want to get swindled out of their money. You come in there, you rack up their time, rack up a bill, and then don't end up paying it. They want a retainer, so at least some of it's paid up front, right? So it was like $250, something like $150, $250 retainer. You don't get that back. Cost was like $15 every 8 minutes of her time. So from the time we show up there, and of course that money's going to go quickly. At 18, what was it? I think it was $15 every 8 minutes. And I can't figure out how much that would be, but I figured it out before, and that money would have been eaten up right quick. And they make sure it is because they want more money than your retainer. So, and she'd have to read even if we made out the documents ourselves, which they said we could do, and I found some place online that you could do it basically for free. It was like $10 or something for the paperwork, and we just filled in the blanks. But the thing is, she'd have to read through it, make sure, if she's a good attorney, she'd read through it, make sure everything was legal. And then, of course, we'd have to sign. She might have to give some, if she needed any correction or maybe suggestions for additions or taking stuff out. That would take up time. Of course, just introducing us to her, us to each other would take some time. And then the wrap-up would take some time. And then we might have to go back if there was any editing and correcting that we had to do. Have to go back. And the person that talked to us, the free consult, they give a free consult. And the free consult was over the phone. And it wasn't with the attorney, it was with the paralegal, I guess they call it, her underling, who was a man. Even he said, this really is unnecessary. He said, she does not recommend getting a prenup unless there's big assets that people want to protect. And he says, or big assets planned on coming. But if you just think one day you might win the lottery, he says, I strongly suggest not doing this because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. And even he said, but this attorney, this yokel floozy that I talked to yesterday, he was really pushing, oh, it could be protected, blah, 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 this and that, this and that. But the paralegal had told me, Michigan law pretty much covers everything. You don't get it. There's nothing you can put in a prenup that will override Michigan law, and there's nothing there's nothing that you can add into a prenup that isn't already Michigan law. And the judge can override what you put in a prenup if it's unfair. And laws may change. So even like, let's say, this or that or the other, it's like most of the stuff is going to be grandfathered in as long as it's fair. And he says that's why you can find so few people that actually do prenups in Michigan, because very few people get prenups to begin with. But in Michigan, the laws are so, because prenups cost a lot of money and it takes a lot of time. And most people can't even afford to get a prenup because it's hundreds of dollars. But then people just most people don't have these huge assets to cover. They're not even expecting any assets. It's pipe dreams of, possibly winning, PCH or something, and that's just, it's so far-fetched that it's not worth the hundreds of dollars to spend on your pipe dream of possibly coming into a lot of money one day when you come from absolute poverty or middle class, because that's what most of us are. And so anyways, this man was really pushing, and he was telling me that he was kind of hinting that I was stupid not to get a prenup. Now, I would be stupid for going to him, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like a lot of the stuff I asked, he says, well, it seems to me it should be, or I'm going to tell you why I think it's this way, using a different law with something different to say, well, this is the way it probably is with this law, because over here in this circumstance, it's this way. And then another thing, he was very anti-woman. Like he says, women often get sympathy from the judges. Let me tell you, no, they don't. And historically, no, they haven't. And by the way, most judges are men, and the laws in all states are made up by overwhelmingly males. So if there's any imbalance, which there isn't, as a matter of fact, it swings more towards empathy for the men than the women. If there is, you can thank men for that, because men are the ones that made the laws. Men are the ones that are the judges. Men are the ones that are the attorneys overwhelmingly, because women have been historically shut out of these practices. It's only recently that women are getting in, but women are being dismissed right and left. They're being over-talked, they're being mansplained to, they're being dismissed right and left. And you can ask any female attorney or any female judge, like cases of sexism and misogyny in their own field. And then historically, women couldn't even file for divorce until I think it was like the mid-1800s, late 1800s, depends, state to state it was different. But heck, New York, they couldn't, no fault, people weren't even allowed to get no fault until I think it was the 1980s. So anyways, but he used an example of the situation where a woman, because she was crying, the judge empathized with her, and even though they had an agreement of the divorce, he says, well, because she's sad that, we should give her more than, and it sounded to me like this was just an old husband's tale, that he didn't actually witness this himself. It was something he heard from somebody who heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody, which is probably absolute nonsense. And so anyways, Yeah. So this man is just a total idiot. He's a misogynist. He's a jerk. And he denies. At the very end, he finally said, "Oh, and sometimes attorneys, because I brought up attorneys sometimes." And I said, this case I heard on the radio that where this man made this new group of attorneys that actually work together during divorce instead of working against each other. I can't remember the name of it, but it was on This American Life, where the woman had all the money and the man was getting a divorce, or they were getting a divorce, and the agreement was that the woman would pay for the man a condo, the condo would be in his name. He'd get his cars, his tools, everything, some furniture, whatever. Everything was great. It was split. Both parties agreed that it was a very, they had been married 15 years or 18 years, something. Very good understanding. And then the attorneys came in, and the attorneys started bickering because they wanted more money. I don't know if they were working per hour, and that's how, the bickering would get them more money per hour if they were working on not a consignment, but a commission type thing where, maybe if the client got more money, they got the client more money, they'd get more money percentage-wise. I don't know. But anyways, the attorneys started bickering, and then it turned these people who were both understood that the relationship was no longer solvent, parting on good terms, and made them bitter enemies. And this attorney was part of this divorce. He was actually part of this. This wasn't something he heard from somebody who heard something. So he's like, he witnessed this. And this was, he says, he saw this. It was absolutely terrible that we turned these good friends who had 15 years of a great relationship into bitter enemies because of this. And so he started this organization of lawyers, of divorce attorneys who worked together instead of battling each other to try and keep peace and keep people from getting angry with each other. And so finally this man admitted, oh yeah, sometimes the attorneys play, No, the attorneys play the biggest part in this because the attorneys egg this on instead of saying, the attorneys will never tell a person. It's like, you know what, I think this is a good deal. Unless you're in this group that this man made, this group of attorneys that, mediate, all these attorneys are like, no, we got to go for the guttural, we got to go for the jugular, we got to get more. Never have you ever heard a divorce attorney, just a plain old divorce attorney, say, you know what, I think you're getting a good deal. Right off the bat, It's always, let's get more. Let's go for the neck, right? Let's go for the throat. So anyways, I would not trust this man. He tries to push prenups when he knows they're worthless. Or maybe he does. Maybe he's talked himself into believing that they actually are worth something, but they're not. So I'm just telling you, don't listen to anybody about Michigan prenups. Do not get one. It's a waste of money. And you might start bickering over the prenup. And then you won't even get married. You'll be bitter enemies before you even get married because you might be like this and this and this. And it doesn't even matter. Or it might just be it's hard enough to live with, to cohabitate with somebody, to add another stressor on there. Like, I didn't get what I wanted out of this prenup. When the prenup means nothing anyways, don't even get one. Just don't get a Michigan prenup. Don't be talked into one. It's a complete waste of money. It's a complete waste of stress. You got enough to do anyways if you're planning a life together and maybe planning a day. I just got married both times I got married. I got married at the Justice of the Peace. Our first time was Justice of the Peace, and then the second time was a wedding officiant in the courthouse in Adrian. So I didn't have all that stress. I didn't even want it. That's misogynistic and bigotry, all that stuff, the wedding scene. But anyways, yeah, so just don't waste your money and don't go to that attorney. And I don't know what his name is, but just don't go to him. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And if he does it, he makes it up. And he'll tell you why he's making it up. So anyways, good day.